We'll have moved into Ward 2.
Hey, Catherine.
Yeah, you said.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Sounds like I'll be Richard.
Yeah, you should keep asking some of these.
Can anyone online hear us?
Yeah, just.
Oh, Sarah says you can ask.
Let's see, I can actually give you audio now too.
No.
Welcome to the last Ward 1 NPA meeting of 2023. We could have one next week if you really want.
No, we can't.
Okay. My name is Tom Darrell. I'm the facilitator tonight, and I want to welcome you. And where's Sam? Oh, here she is. Sam is the one who made the chili that you're enjoying tonight. And as we usually do, we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves, and we're going to start right over here. And there's microphones around. If you can speak into the mic.
Yeah.
For that entire back row, don't bring that forward. There's another microphone that's sitting, but that's only for this middle row right here. So you pass it up and down that one. And then you guys, let's try that. It might be less confusing than in the past. So
I've got my microphone and I'm not afraid to use it. Thanks, Charlie. I'm Brian Pine. I'm the director of the Community and Economic Development Office. But I just have to share that a long time ago, I lived just around the corner, and just getting out of UVM, I joined the Ward 1 NPA Steering Committee in 1985.
Hi, I'm Carol Livingston. I haven't been on the steering committee as long as Brian, but I live on Clerical Court. I'm on the steering committee, and welcome.
Good evening. Gary Golden. I'm the East District School Commissioner, and I also live on Clerical Court.
I'm Chris Hazley. I'm interloping from Ward 3. I serve on the steering committee for the Ward 3 MPA, and I'm here to say hello and check out your agenda.
Kathy Allwell. Oh,
Go ahead.
are we supposed to?
Okay. That's fine.
Kathy Allwell, Prospect, North Prospect.
Catherine Verman, North Street.
Carter Newbeezer, on the steering committee, running for Ward 1 City Council, and I'm over on Riverside Ave.
Thanks. I'm Cheryl Green, and I live in Burlington Co-housing on East Avenue.
Peter Lukowski, co-housing, East Avenue.
Jonathan Chapel Sokol, North Prospect Street, and I'm on the steering committee.
Hi, I'm Dave Cawley. I live on Nash Place, and I'm part of the Old East End.
Hi, Troy Hedrick. I live on Billeux Court. I'm also state rep for this district, Chittenden 15.
Catherine Bach, I live upstairs.
Richard Hilliard, High Grove Court. I was on the steering committee for a long time. Some of that time was with Jeff Hand, which who some of you may know, but it was my pleasure to serve with him.
Thanks, Richard. Good evening. My name is Jeff Hand. Nice to see many of you. And Richard, good to see you again. I live on Henry Street, and I'm running for City Council in Ward 1. As Richard mentioned, I think he and I and maybe Wayne Senville were on the steering committee from early 2000s to 2007 or 8. So it's like an alumni night here. It's nice to see you all and look forward to getting to know some of you better. Thanks.
Okay, so you stand right over here and say that again, because if you can't see the camera can see you.
I'm being blocked.
You're definitely being blocked. So stand over here and just say that. See you right there and say your name.
Sure. Yes. Hi again, Jeff Hand, live on Henry Street, running for city council in Ward 1. And as I just mentioned, former steering committee member here at the NPA. Thanks.
This one. Okay. Joel Collada, 20 Chase Street in the Old East End.
Samantha Ayotte, Chase Street, Old East End, and member of the steering committee.
Here, and I'm still Tom. I live on Nash Place, and I'm also on the steering committee. And then online, Sarah, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, so Cyril Flash, also part of co-housing on East Avenue. You can't hear me at all? Anyway, if you can hear me, my name is Cyril Flash. I'm also part of co-housing on East Avenue.
Well, feel it is co-housing too. So we cannot hear people online. Okay. But we do, people online, we do see you. We saw Cyril and Sophie, and I think there's one other person. Oh, there's more than one more.
Yeah, we have spaces. And some answers.
All right, well, while you guys are trying to fix that, we'll circle back to that. So, next is announcements, and before I open it up, I've got a couple. And it's about the community forum. There's two. One is tomorrow at December 9th or 14th at 6 p.m. at Contoy's Auditorium, and it's going to be talking about drug trafficking and gun crime. And it's going to feature a number of people, including a U.S. Attorney, Caress, and Special Agent from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. And then on December 19th, also at 6, also at Contoy's, there'll be substance use disorder and property crime discussion with a number of people, including the state attorney, Sarah George, the mayor, a bunch of other people. Anyhow, this should be available where? It's probably online, but it'll certainly be in our minutes.
And the speakers are working now in case you want.
All right, we'll circle back. Sarah, you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I thought I already did that, but I can see I'm somewhat live now. So, Cyril Flash, also part of Burlington Co-housing on East Avenue, Ward 1.
Okay, and Becca? Becca, you're on mute. All right, we're gonna go to Christine.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Christine Longmore Hughes. I live on Riverside Ave in Burlington. I'm the director of the Richard Kemp Center, and I believe I'm on the agenda towards the end of the meeting to do a brief presentation.
Okay, thank you. Who do we miss? Jake? Jake, you're on mute. Here you are.
Hello. Am I introducing myself?
Yes.
I am Jake Schumann. I live on Hildred Drive. Anything else?
And I think Gene Hopkins.
Okay, I just got permission to unmute myself. I'm Jean Hopkins at Burlington Co-housing. and very interested in all you're doing. Thank you.
And Mark Hughes?
Good evening. I'm Reverend Mark Hughes. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, and I'm also fortunate enough to be Christine's husband, and I have no official capacity tonight.
Okay, did I miss anyone?
Can you hear me, Sophie Quest?
Oh, Sophie, yes, I can hear you.
Chase Street, Old East Avenue. I mean, Old East Neighborhood Coalition, excuse me.
Glenn?
Hi, it's Holly Shaner McCray. I'm with Glenn. We're on Mansfield Avenue. And Glenn?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's here too.
Okay, and we had someone. Here.
Oh, I was told this is my microphone. Started. Hi, I'm Tim Doherty. I live on Colonial Square.
And I'm Sam Doherty. I also live on Colonial Square.
Right. Do we have other announcements that people would like to make?
If any, I have here a copy of the petition about making an anti-apartheid city. If anyone would like to have a chance to read it and sign it, see me after the meeting. And you can sign it here.
Okay. Other announcements? Yes.
I had spoken with Julia Ursaki at DPW, and I just wanted to let everybody know that sometime, I think in 2024, they are going to start their Plan BTV Vision Zero, which will just be DPW kind of looking and getting a kind of like a task force of people who are looking to improve walkability, bikeability, transit in the area. And I think, if I'm correct, she said that there will be a representative from each ward that would be joining the task force. So I think in the next couple of meetings, we're going to try and get her or someone from DPW here.
Okay. Yeah.
Just quick, welcome Carter and Jeff, candidates for Ward 1 City Council. We anticipate in January having some kind of a public forum for the community, the NPA community, at least, to get to know each of you a little bit better. So we hope you can clear that spot on the calendar so that we can have the conversation. I'd also like to just mention it's in the Civic Clerk. We talked about it a little bit when Ben Travers was here last month. We're trying to circulate. I'm trying to circulate a proposal for a resolution for the city council, which would help describe something about the relationship between NPAs and the city council, and to set an expectation that city councils at least consider resolutions that need to be reviewed by NPAs before they get voted on. So it's almost illegible, but it's right there. I didn't make copies. I should have made copies to hand out. There's no time rush on this. I can make a ton of copies for next month and we can hand it out. And then maybe the month after that, we could vote on it. But I'd want to get community to agree that this is something we want the city council to consider at that time. So.
Are there any other announcements? Yes, pardon.
Yeah, just quickly, we're going to be over at Co-Housing having a conversation at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 20th. So not today, next Wednesday, just about local issues, allow folks to get to know me, grill me on what you're wondering. And yeah, should be a good time. So just wanted to invite everybody.
Any announcements from people online? Hearing none. That brings us to Speak Out, which is a little bit different from announcements. It's something, if there's something you want to talk about, more of a discussion item rather than a pronouncement of something. Now is your chance to bring up issue. So, do we have Speak Out issues in the room? Yes. Yeah.
I may get a little weepy. I'm starting already, but I just want to say to our neighbors, particularly those who live on Prospect Street, that we're with you, that you're an amazing neighborhood, and we support you and understand that even if we don't live on Prospect Street, we feel the struggles and the pain and the fear and the hope that I'm assuming was generated by the shootings. I also would urge you, I had a chance to listen to the interview between Michaela LaFrac on Vermont Edition today. She interviewed Elizabeth Price, who you probably know is the mom of Hashem, who is now in rehab down in Boston. The interview was pretty incredible. And Michaela asked her about her feelings about Burlington and whether she would come back or whether she'd gotten alienated by being here and what had happened to her family. And she just was radiant about Burlington and about your neighborhood and our neighborhood. And I think it's something that would really help you feel the hope. She was really clear that this could happen anywhere. And I think it's caused a lot of us to realize Burlington could be anywhere. There's nothing so special about us. But what is special, I think, is the hope, the resilience, the power, the strength. She felt, her whole family has felt so supported and so loved and so taken care of by all of you, by all of us. And that's what I hope this event leaves you with, is that understanding of how hard that was and how difficult that was for her family and for you all, you know, that you went through this really, really hard time, and that there is hope for us as a strengthening community. And we certainly have that opportunity every time we show up together and invest in this community. So thinking about you guys very, very much.
On that note, I'm sure you've all seen the green hearts that say neighbors stand against hate. And there are more out on the table if anybody wants one. And that color comes from what happens if you mix the blue in the Israeli flag with the green in the Palestinian flag. And one of the Quaker meeting members, one of the young mothers, made that. So you're welcome to take and put them on your window wherever you live.
Anything else from Speak Up or for Speak Up? Anybody online have anything to add to Speak Up? Not that we're going to move forward to School Commissioner update. Gary? Gary Golden has been very patient with us over the last few meetings. He pushed off the agenda sometimes, and so he is up front. It hurts.
Good evening. Again, Gary Golden. I'm the East District School Board Commissioner. And I have regrettable news. We have an opening coming up for the Ward 1 Commissioner position. Achilles is graduating next May and May a year from now, and just doesn't know what his plans are. So he's freeing up the position for anyone to run that would be interested. So just want to throw that out there and thank him for his service. If Zariah or Kathy feel some void in their lives about service, we could do a draft petition for one of them to, step forward. So we are headlong into both the budget time, which is always a battle royale in Vermont, because we are the weirdest combination of local control and state control of any state in the country. most most state Supreme Courts would never seen the validity of the Brigham decision back in 1993, which basically was a family from Southern Vermont petitioning the court to say our children did not get the education that a child in a richer community got because all funding was based on property taxes. And so that was after, I'm trying to remember, 20 years of a foundation support program that the state had. Earhart, Brian, others.
Foundation formula. It's called foundation formula.
Yes, that was also horrid. So that what that dictates, though, is a sort of a give and take process that will happen, has started in October with our approaching this, submitting to the state our numbers for number of students IEPs, number of students for universal lunch, our total population. And that started sort of the chain reaction of formulating what kind of educational fund will be available, what stipend we will get from the state. That's not the word, and I'm struggling for the word, which is a combination of federal money that we might get, say IEP, special ed reimbursement funding or grant funding, which we've gotten a lot of lately. They're called the ESSER funds, which I had to look up. Elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. Are you impressed? As a former spouse of a school board member, I'm looking at Brian for a lot. And Kathy, I'm going to let you off the hook today. So that money's running out this year, and that's really having a huge impact on our budget and budgets across the country, particularly in Vermont, because we did programming with that money, and that money's going away. So those are all pieces that are happening. So the 18% increase in property taxes that was publicized by, mostly out of context, by a lot of the outlets. It's not guaranteed. It's not that simple yet. It will never be simple, for one thing. But we are in kind of an interesting crunch. So please, this is an open offer. After you read my post today on Front Porch Forum, if you have any questions, please email, write. Email is probably easier because there's some technical pieces in there that it would be easier for me to share with you written material because of all those gyrations that are happening. But we're going to get money from the Equalized Student Fund. My story in my post was that I was part of a grant at Barnes School. I'm going to call it Barnes because Lawrence Barnes was a pretty amazing person, and predated the addition of the sustainability magnet school component. But we, over a summer, picked up a full classroom of Somali Bantu students with minimal English. So we were providing food, we were providing socialization, we were providing basic English proficiencies, and that came out of nowhere. That was not part of any budget. It was not a part of any forecast. While the students or the families were placed here through the refugee resettlement program, there were no attached funds federally for that. They got translation services for 6 months. They got the public subsistence money for 6 months, and then they were off the books for both of those, expected to be working. They had host families, mostly from religious institutions, but Armando Belseca, thank you, toured. He was at that point, it was the Department of Education, and he was the director. Toured the building, saw everything we were doing. Make clucking, appreciative noises, went back. We were not the only city getting students. And that was 2004. We've never received a cent from the state for that population. Now we will through the weighted student program. You got to read it in the stuff I sent you because it's it's basically the state admitting that there are some districts that have additional costs based on their populations. Ours being EL students. Our global majority is try to look it up, 35 to 40% of our population. So many of them are getting, most are getting liaison services, which we pay for. Many are getting EL special instruction, smaller classes. I sat in on 7 students back in the spring. You know, that's a really hard staff student ratio to manage. Those costs are finally going to be acknowledged by the state. And that formula still be worked out. And Martine Gulick, who's both on our board and a state senator, is saying every district out there has their reps trying to undo that piece. So any support you want to give your rep, please do, because they're fighting an uphill battle. So all those pieces are keeping this a pretty fluid process. Locally, our principals are meeting with their school staff, with their admin support, and looking at what they have money for through our internal weighted student formula. Each school has a different makeup of number of IEP students, number of, what's starting to happen. There are some behavior programs that need to be either started or reinstituted that were canceled probably one superintendent ago. And they're needed again. And so that's going to be additional funds. That should be in the formula. So all that's to say, this is a kind of a moving target right now. We're still waiting on a more concrete number from the state, which we'll get in January. And that's what we'll start building our budget on in earnest. That plus these conversations that are happening in each building. I'm pushing back a little that I'm thinking if we're going to be cutting school staff, we should be looking at commensurate admin staff cuts. That's what Vermont's, State University has been going through with their declining enrollment. Seems a little logical that, if we have a choice between, I'm biased as a former teacher, that the pain should be shared across the whole school system as far as staffing. That's just my bias. That's kind of that's being considered. I'll keep you posted on that. Otherwise, Sam is on his second or third principal.
Third, yeah.
Yeah. And we'll have a fourth in the fall. So we're sort of canary in the coal mine as far as administrative pictures for the state. When I was working here, I was trying to count at least 5 or 6 principals who had plus 20 years in the job. We have our veteran right now, 7 years. So times are changing. It's a difficult position. I'm also a former minister, and it's sort of similar. You have these jobs that call for 5 or 6 distinctive skill sets. Everything from public speaker to motivator to numbers to crunching to teaching adults, which is a whole different skill set. That's what you go through every council meeting. Being principal, being administrator is an incredibly difficult job. And as our societal norms change around schools and discipline at home, that carries into schools and makes being a principal an incredibly difficult job that does nothing commensurates the money that's and time it takes to be a principal. So we are moving to starting to grow our own. We had one internal high school teacher who stepped up to be an administrator, but had to step down due to pregnancy and then third child. So Francesca's back, but we'll be talking to her. So that's the model we need to do. We have to grow our own. No surprises. We also need to be looking at growing our own teachers of our global majority. And that's something the state used to have money for that has also gone away. So we really, if we're going to talk about trying to have a population of adults who look like our students, we've got to do it here. We competing in the other states for those teachers is incredibly difficult because you have a school district showing up with 20 or 30 contracts that the person with the contracts can actually provisionally hire someone at that open house. And we are, 3 or 4 interviews to get to that same spot. So we're at a huge disadvantage. Plus, moving to Vermont and trying to find housing, good luck with that. So that's sort of our life in a nutshell in the district. We've sort of stuck our collective foot in our mouth around some of the curricula we put out for the Israeli-Hamas conflict. Part of that was there were people who looked at the title, didn't really dig into the material and made assumptions based on the title. But we're going to do a better job of that as far as vetting material and publicize that vetting as we release the material. Otherwise, it's sort of life as usual, though it's been a really weird fall. I mean, the shooting in the car that happened in Bristol with one of our students, the principal position, just the general Islama and Arabic hatred out there. They manifest themselves in our district, and I'm hoping Sam can say what we're hearing is the teachers are out and talking more during the common times, during lunch, trying to make connections to have conversations. Is that kind of accurate?
I haven't really noticed that.
Okay, I will pass that along because that's our hope. But it's also, teachers have to have meetings during lunch. They're calling back parents from the morning or emailing back. But that's our goal, is to have parents out, or not parents, sorry, teachers out, having those difficult conversations with students. Hopefully, maybe having an advisory. Not so much. All right. That's okay. Thank you.
Sample of one.
I'll have 2 others in my car later, so I'll find out. But no, they're good samples. All right. So, any questions so far?
Got a question back here.
Okay.
That's right.
Thanks. Gary, I just want to say, as a parent of 3 in the public schools and 1 in the high school, as you mentioned, thank you so much for doing this work. You maybe undersold it a little bit from my perspective as to sort of the challenges of the time that you're facing in your role right now. And needless to say, as a father, particularly with respect to the high school, really, really concerned about the turnover in the principal role, not assigning any blame, but concerned about it, obviously. when you combine that with the fact that the kids are in the temporary space anyway, which I think everybody is doing, making the best possible situation out of a difficult situation, it's still not ideal. You add that to these other issues that you alluded to that we're all feeling incredibly deeply, and it's just a really, really fraught time to be a kid in Burlington. And I really, really appreciate the work you're doing. Most of it's behind the scenes, and a lot of it is completely thankless, right? So thank you.
Thank you. I'll bore you with this, but it's it's really interesting being on this side of the table after having been in the district for 8 years as an employee. I quipped that I kind of know where some of the bodies are buried, so that helps. But it actually does. I'm hoping it's been a positive experience for you otherwise as you went through Edmonds. Yeah. As our daughter did, probably similar paths. I'm Mr. Skeptic, but I think I can say as a whole, we have a really capable staff that love their kids. We have a great superintendent and who's, I think, if students aren't feeling too many bumps, it's because he's absorbing them and is handling most situations pretty well. Is that your feeling, Kathy, as a former? Yeah. I think we're really lucky to have him. It's no drama. It's just no drama. It's, if I'm wrong, I call it. He's wrong. He calls it. We're looking at what happened. They've done sort of, I'm trying to remember the military term, but they've done pretty much we call campaign reviews, but they've looked back at what didn't work about Laura McBride for her to leave early, what didn't work for some of the other principals who've left, what didn't work for Deb through her hiring. And I think there's a lot of things that are going to change for the next hiring period that I think we can be more hope isn't just when I was a behavior specialist, my saying was hope is not a plan. And we can't really base that. We really have to be, we have to weight the skills that prospective administrators come with to what we want. And it's going to be complicated because, we also have strategic goals around making our staff look like our students. So like there were two people who, can I say this? I think I can. Two who applied who had either no or for the interim principal position, who had no or bad experience as a principal. Did they get even considered? No. So, we're learning. We're learning. But thank you for both the, appreciation and the reality check that, we are a district in flux. Some of this has been out of our control. With the PCB and the numbers, we will be joined by many, many, many other schools in that difficulty. As a progressive light, I will quote Bernie 21 or 2 years ago, who said, if we go to war, every school budget within 20 years will fail. Our infrastructure will decay, just the whole lineup of what we're seeing. So, here we are. And we'll make the best of it. I'll keep you posted. I'll finding that with board governance, there's limits to what commissioners are able to do, but I will do certainly what I can. Was quipping with Carter about nice guys, nice people being in public roles. My daughter don't know if I can say this out in public.
Don't say it.
Her nickname for me is Rat Gopher there. And that side is starting to kind of show itself a little bit because I think Kathy would agree there. Sometimes you get sort of so answers. And we are entering a period where those just do not work anymore. Because, it's going to be battle royale to some degree about who wins out. We're in one with the state, so it's going to be interesting. I'll keep you posted. Any other questions for me now? Oh, Kathy, go.
Because the school board had a committee that organized all the schools around the state to fight for this, that ESL kids were seen in this formula. And I've heard that there are people in some of the more affluent areas of the state that are trying to fight this. I thought we fought it off because in the end it got passed. But then someone said to me, "Oh no, those forces are coming back again." So have we gotten that committee back up again and running across the state? Because we literally organized and had them all together, and with that number we could win again.
I think those there's a certain level. Schools are bureaucracies and change is difficult. And if you've had an easy road for a long time, you like that road and you don't really want to pay a fair share of everybody else's cost. And so I think on one hand, there was the noble feelings about, this is a fair process. But I think there are others who have been fighting that for years and were not pleased with the outcome. And so they've regrouped and probably new strategies. But Martine is certainly aware of it, is working with the Senate body from Chittenden County. I think Emma and others could be rallied to, she'll say there's not a lot of meetings or support, with the Burlington reps, but, hopefully they will, they have to kind of find that themselves, but that could be.
There wasn't when we started, when we
Correct.
got organized. That's why I'm just worried that if you don't put life back into that group that were statewide, you won't win. That was the first time.
Yeah. Oh, there's been
around the state organized against or
for
in
this
support of something. So I'm really worried if you were saying that they haven't.
It's
You don't know if that committee has been.
I don't know about the committee. I'll bump something to Martine and get back to you. Okay. Erhard.
Well, this isn't the question I was going to ask, but as someone who used to, as somebody who lobbied for the city, including for the school board for 11 years, if this is a reality, I would urge the board and the superintendent to talk to the city about getting the city's lobbyists engaged in this, because it's not just going to be a matter of the Burlington delegation. For something like that, if it's really under attack, it needs someone working on it actively that's not themselves a lawmaker to rally those lawmakers. So just, I would take that back to the board and to the superintendent. Yeah, that's if it's under attack, the thing is, you can work to get something affected and implemented there, 1 year, and it can, if you're not vigilant, it's gone the next year or 2 years down the road. You just have to constantly be on it. But that wasn't my question. So my question relates to, I've been in touch with a young Black professional who lives out of state, and have a couple questions that have been asked of me that I don't know the answer to. And one of them is, there's actually three questions. One is, what is the school department doing at this point to encourage retention of Black professionals within the system. That's question one. Question two is, what is the percentage of folks that are currently teachers in the system and maybe administrators that look like the students, as you said, put it. And then the third one is, I've heard that there has, totally aside from the BHS principal that left, has there been a visible have there been visible Black professionals leaving the system, to your knowledge, over the last year or two?
So if you need perspective, my daughter also went through three principals during her time at the high school. So the first one that I had there were several Old North End principals that it was sort of that wasn't my district or wasn't my school, is after I left the district as an employee, and my daughter didn't go through them. So I don't have the stories totally about those, but there at least was one, I believe it was IAA principal, who was a gentleman of color who left under less than great conditions. The ones I have more to in touch with would be Noel Green was an interim principal at the high school at the tail end of Superintendent Bang's time. Crossed over the first year with Superintendent Flanagan, and abruptly resigned February or March that year, because the board had not moved to make him permanent. And both Claire Wool, our board president, and Tom said that it was in the works and thought they had communicated that to him, apparently not to his satisfaction. LaShawn at Sells, Whitmore, Lynn, trying to remember what was public and what I've heard since, let her license lapse during COVID. My educated guess was that it wasn't just recently lapsed. It'd probably been over a year, and I'm not sure. I think that's accurate. Oh, thank you. I know we are. Thank you. And then Herb Perez, also at Flynn, was had to be let go over an incident, ill-advised restraint, and then dead. So yeah, 4 and 4 years. So yeah, we've got to look at support. I think there are built-in systems of mentoring new hires, at least for a year, and then that can be extended at their request, or if principal feels like they need more time. As far as teachers, I believe I would have to look at the number. It's less than 20 for sure, perhaps less than 15 total, but that's not the full staff. So those numbers might be a little harder to parse out, but I would do that for you. I think that's all three. But I think overall it's a good system. Are we learning? Yeah. So, the questions, please. I put my contact info in my letters and on the Front Porch Forum. ggolden@bsdvt.org is my email. Please reach out as any questions you have, and I'll keep you posted on the process.
Thanks, Gary. All right, next up. It's a city council update, and Tim, you're first, the public safety committee update. Great.
Hi, everyone. So as I think everybody knows, I'm on the Public Safety Committee along with City Council President Paul and Councilor Grant. The big thing that I want to push tonight is to encourage as many people as possible here in Ward 1 and across the city to participate in our upcoming public safety forums. So the first one is tomorrow night, December 14th. And it starts at 6 o'clock. It's at Contois. Chief Murad is there. Lieutenant Bellevue, who runs the drug unit. The United States Attorney, Colo Carest, will be there. A special agent who I don't know from ATF will also be there. And then the second community forum is on the 19th, also at 6 o'clock at City Hall. Jess Kirby from Vermonters for Criminal Justice Reform, Commissioner Mark Levine from the Department of Public Health, again, the chief, the mayor, State's Attorney Sarah George, who's our state prosecutor as opposed to our federal prosecutor, Colo Carest, and then Rachel Jolly from the Community Justice Center. And I think that we've discussed this before, but by way of background, these community forums were a product of the resolution on public safety and public health that we passed back in October. And I think they're a really, really important opportunity for members of the community to come and have the opportunity to hear from the professionals in the public health and public safety offices that do the real work, make the real decisions, and who can provide, I think, much needed sunshine on both the criminal justice process and some of these issues that are affecting people suffering from addiction. If you go to the website, if you Google it, if you go to the city website, there's a special city website. There is an opportunity to submit questions, which I encourage people to do. If people have questions that they want asked, I'm happy to also help facilitate that. From my perspective, there is I hear so much misunderstanding and misinformation, not through anyone's fault, but people generally have a lot of misconceptions about the way our criminal justice system works, about the way law enforcement investigates crime and interacts with the prosecutorial authorities, misconceptions about people who are suffering from addiction, experiencing homelessness, and the relationship between those issues in crime. And my hope, and I think the hope of the other counselors is that these forums will be an opportunity to sort of clear some of that air and bring a little bit of sunlight and answer some of these questions that I constantly hear sort of circulating over and over again. My goal, we discussed this last night at our public safety committee meeting. My goal, our goal on the committee is that out of these forums, which are of course not solutions in of themselves, obviously, that the hope, not a plan. I liked that, Gary, but the hope is that we're going to be able to identify some of the areas that are really truly within the city council's purview, where we can make some appreciable differences in the public safety arena. And so, the goal is that coming out of these forums, we're going to be able to move forward with some action items in January, February, and March that will make sense and that will be well informed, and that that hopefully the community will have a sense as to where they came from based upon some of the dialogue that comes from these forums. It's just a really good opportunity to meet with these professionals and really ask people who are doing the work what the work entails. So please come.
A quick question. Can you give a couple of examples of those misconceptions?
Yeah. So, one misconception that I hear about, and that I used to hear about a lot when I was a federal prosecutor, was this issue. And this has been a topic of conversation in our public safety committee meetings. And I think generally in some of the city council interactions is this question of like, well, we've gone onto the tip line. We've called and notified the police that there's an active drug distribution situation at a particular location, and nothing happens, or it seems like nothing happens. And I am watching people show up and do hand-to-hand drug transactions on a daily basis. Maybe I take some pictures. I see needles everywhere. I see people handing over small amounts of cash and plastic bags. I know they're dealing drugs there. Why can't you do anything about it? Police, prosecutor. And that is an extremely reasonable response to a pressing situation. The reality is that neither Sarah George nor Colo Caress nor any of the prosecutors in their office are going to be able to go before a state or a federal judge and get probable cause to execute a search warrant at that location, or to get arrest warrants, which is what you need to do to move a drug investigation forward based upon a neighbor's say-so, no matter how accurate the neighbor's observation is. No one, it isn't a question of doubting the truth of what the neighbor says or what the many neighbors may say or observe. It's a question about gathering admissible evidence that is sufficient to meet the preliminary standards, which is probable cause to get into the house, and to make arrests and execute lawful searches. That is a really difficult, time-intensive and labor-intensive process. In order to get a search warrant for a house in Burlington, you need to have either an undercover officer or a cooperator wearing a wire, under close observation, using recorded purchase money, making what are called controlled purchases under incredibly close supervision. And that process can be incredibly difficult even to get to the first step of doing it, let alone to do it well in a way that gets the prosecutor admissible evidence sufficient to meet the quantum of proof, and to ensure that everybody involved in the process is as reasonably safe as it can be. So how does that sort of translate into sort of misconceptions and, I think less than helpful sort of public policy discussion, right? You end up with people saying, oh, you, Mr. Prosecutor, or you, Mrs. Prosecutor, aren't doing anything. Why aren't you doing anything? And the truth of the matter is, the thing that needs to be done is difficult and time consuming, and that's frustrating, but there's really good reasons for that. There's really good reasons why the standard of proof to prosecute someone is so high. There's really good reasons why when you go before a state judge or a federal judge, federal magistrate judge is typically the person who handles it, it is not a rubber stamp to get into that house. The judge may find that you do not have probable cause. And if you don't have probable cause, you got to go back and do more work to get it. And the prosecutor, and we have, wonderful defense bar here. And in my experience, really, really strong ethical prosecutors in both the state and the federal level. Good prosecutors like Colo Caress and Sarah George will not take cases forward if the cops haven't done a good enough job in getting to that level of evidence. So that translates to a totally understandable feeling of frustration, a totally understandable, not just feeling, but actuality of things are not happening quickly, but there is a reason for it, right? And that, that reason, although complicated, sometimes dictates the pace at which things can happen. So that's just one example. It was a little long-winded, but that's just one example of something that I think people need to understand. People could have the opportunity to understand better about our criminal justice system, and how that sort of translates into some of the frustrations that I and Zariah and others on the city council keep hearing about. There's drug dealing in my neighborhood. There's drug dealing at that house. I know there is. Why can't they just come and stop it? Well, that was a lot of talking for me. Any other questions about this? I really think this is a wonderful opportunity. I know people want action. I know this isn't an ordinance, but I think it's a really important step in the process. So I encourage people to take advantage of it if they can. And if they can't, I'm happy to help to the extent I can get those questions answered.
I get a good question. The meetings that you talked about one tomorrow or the one? Yeah, are they gonna be,
Will there be opportunity for questions?
You can submit questions.
So if you have a question, you'd be well advised to write it down before you go?
My understanding is that we've set it up is that there's not going to be, I don't believe that there's going to be an opportunity to sort of just raise your hand and ask a question. But if you go to the website, there's a link where you can sort of submit questions.
Okay. All right.
There is going to be a moderator, and so, it is going to be a moderated, it's not going to be a free for all. It's
like our meeting.
Like.
Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you.
any other questions? Not, we're gonna move forward. Sorry, you're gonna talk about.
Somebody's raising their hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed somebody. Ann, or no, Jean? You're on mute, Jean?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, can we submit questions prior to the meeting, like tomorrow morning or?
Yes, yes, if you go to the website, and I've got it up in front of me, the Public Safety Community Forums website, you can get to it just by Googling that.
Okay.
There is a link to submit questions.
Good, okay. Thank you. I'm very interested in gun control right now. Okay.
Well, I'd love to talk to you about gun control. That's something that I've been passionate about for 20 years. So let's talk about it. And I think one of the things that I'm interested in doing is reviving the city ordinances that we've attempted to get through in previous years and that have gone to Montpelier to die. That I think is one of the things that will be discussed, certainly. I think should be discussed.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, I might be fairly short-winded tonight because I'm on the agenda to talk about the status of the MOU between the city and UVM, which I can't say a lot about. So I don't think that we've gotten an update since the last NPA that we had. The last that the city council got. And so I think the only thing I can say is the same thing that I said then is I think the administration is, the administration has said that they're happy with the direction that the MOU is trending. I would not be supportive of the MOU as written, although I can't share any details about what is written in the MOU. The UVM has said that they don't want to make, that their board doesn't want to make any long-term commitments. Obviously, any rezoning that we would do is a long-term commitment. And I think given some of the lack of trust, it feels like that needs to be balanced. That's all I can say about that. The second thing that I can talk about is different UVM is the medical center. The MOU for their land agreement is coming up next year, I believe, for renegotiation. And so they're going to have a community forum in the new year, I assume sometime in January, in early January. The date's not set yet. Otherwise, I would share it. They've reached out to Tim and I for meetings and recently, I think it was yesterday. And are planning on having a community forum about that MOU. And that's all I've got as far as MOUs, but happy to answer any other questions about anything else. Oh, and one more. Yes, I'll take questions on that. And then I do have one more update that I want to talk about with Church Street.
I have one sort of process point that might be helpful. And Jonathan, you and I were talking about this earlier today in terms of the timing on the UVM MOU issue. Zariah has advocated for, and I completely agree, making sure to the extent that it's within our power, that there is ample time for the community to be made aware of and to provide input on this MOU and this discussion of the zoning changes. And we both feel exactly the same on that front. I think that the agenda, I was speaking to Megan Tuttle on my way over here. I think that there is going to be an agenda item put forward for Monday's city council meeting, in which they're going to do question and answer, no action item, but question and answer on the MOU on Monday. And I think that the plan is to then have more opportunities, including an opportunity to have city officials come and speak at the NPA in January, with a vote tentatively at some point in January. And one of the issues, one of the questions, and I sort of put this out, and we can, you guys can give me feedback as you want, is whether you would prefer as an NPA to have Megan or whomever is the right person from the city team, potentially the university itself, if they'll agree to do it, come to our NPA meeting, or whether or not a sort of general meeting, community meeting is sufficient, or both. I can't guarantee an outcome on that, but I do know that they're sort of looking for feedback on that, which I'd be happy to convey. But that's the sort of rough timeline as I
didn't even know it was coming back to us I don't see the agenda until Thursdays or Fridays. So
well, I got some inside information from Megan. So that's the sort of timing of it, as I understand it.
Is it not possible? We always seem to get the information in the same month that they're making their decision. So there's no way that really we have any input, because we're hearing about it and then it's a fait accompli. So can we not have it be voted on in January and maybe voted on in February, so that we at least have one more NPA meeting in between before you
we do not decide the agenda. That is up to the council president and the administration. And so we can ask for it. And of course, the majority of the council can vote to table something, but we can't. I have asked many times, but I cannot actually control that. And so I think if it does come, and we feel like we need more time to review it, that's definitely writing to the city council and saying, please table this, or to Karen Paul to say, can you move the vote to a later agenda item or a later date?
And just to be clear, we're talking about the MOU Monday of this month is the beginning of that discussion and the first opportunity to have. So it isn't quite the same month. But I certainly absolutely want particular wards 1 and wards 8,
right?
Who are the 2 wards that I represent, but also I would say arguably most affected by this, to make sure that there is plenty of time. And I'm very sensitive to this question of feeling like things are coming at the last second and it being a rush. And I'm committed to doing everything in my power, which may not be enough, but I'm committed to doing everything in my power to make sure that that is not the feeling and the way it's handled.
Could we not, as an MPA, send a message to Karen Paul that we asked if they really want community input, then they got to give us time to give the input.
I think being proactive is always a good idea. So I think asking for a minimum number of days between the release and the final council vote would be a good idea.
And you had said you wanted 14 days.
I said minimum, because most of the time I've been getting like 5 days lately. So I was like at least 2 weeks, but I think at least 30 days or 45 days or whatever you want, as considering especially how long this has been on the table. I don't think it's too much to ask.
So Tom, do we want to propose a resolution tonight? I'm just asking the facilitator.
No. We're behind schedule.
Well, I guess maybe one way is that
but I'd be willing to put a proposal out on Front Porch Forum and see if people agree with it, and as individuals we could send the same letter out.
Yeah, or we could get multiple signatures based on what you have on Front Porch Forum.
Right, but we would avoid sending something out as a NPA per se.
Brian, did you have something?
That was okay.
I guess I need that mic. Just to say I'm part of the city team working on this, and I would say the counselors have been very strong advocates, and it's heard right now, and it doesn't need to be necessarily a resolution, although I think resolutions carry a little more oomph maybe, but I will be certainly relaying this back to my boss, the mayor, and to Councilor Paul, the NPA sentiment here. The sentiment of the body, even though you're not taking a vote, is at least a month of time, it sounds like. 45 days.
45.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really not very much considering the holiday season.
No, it's true. Yeah. And there will be public information on Monday. So when the counselors mentioned that it'll be discussed, there'll actually be public information available on Monday. So yeah.
And then I just have one more note. This isn't an update for me, but if folks watched not the last city council meeting, but the one before, just one more piece of misinformation, misperception, whatever it is. If folks saw the update from the Church Street Marketplace Commission on the flow of traffic on Church Street. If you didn't, there's basically 4 slides that are great. I'll share them in an update this week. I've got a slew of updates coming because I've been behind, but it basically shows that foot traffic is at, or both foot traffic and hospitality gross receipts are at or higher than they were on average than pre-COVID, so years 2017 to 2019. And the thing that is drastically down is gross receipts of retail. And so it's not that people aren't in Church Street. It's not that people aren't walking around on Church Street. It's not that people aren't visiting or that they're not going to restaurants. It's just that they're not shopping in the same way that they were before COVID. And so I think that both as we continue into the holiday season and then into the new year, I think that's just some news to share as folks who are still very incredibly proud of our city and want to share it with other people.
And I'm sure we both can say, please go down to Church Street and shop locally during the holiday season. All the Doherty Christmas shopping this year. Sam, if I can't get on Church Street, you're not getting it. And I mean that. I don't know if anybody's been on Church Street lately. I know,
nice.
I know we have our political issues on this and debate. Church Street is gorgeous. I'm down there every day. I love being down there. It's gorgeous. Go down, enjoy Church Street. It's beautiful. The lights, the shops. Take a walk if you don't want to shop or aren't in a position to, but really, please, it's wonderful downtown.
It's free hot chocolate.
Free hot chocolate.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to just echo that I was there on Saturday and the impression was completely opposite from what the hearsay is. There were actually people with bags all over the place, in and out of the stores. It was, streets were full, youth were singing, people were happy. It was a beautiful sight.
All right, you're up.
Hi, I just want to, from all of us, give a big appreciation to Zariah and Tim. This meeting on this last Monday with this just robust, amazing public forum, which meant that the work for the 2 of them and 10 others went from 5 o'clock that afternoon until midnight. They were still making decisions and working. Some of you may know of that. So standing room only in Contoys and a bunch of us on Zoom. Thank you.
Very well.
I've got just a quick question, Zariah, for you on clarification. Are there 2 MOUs? One between the city and UVM, and then the second one between the medical center and somebody else?
I don't even think that those are the only 2 MOUs. Specifically, the UVM one is the land agreement, the land use agreement. But yes, that is with the medical center, which is different than the one that we've been talking about, which is just with the university.
The medical center land is owned by UVM?
I've not looked at the agreements yet. I've not done my homework on this. I'm just telling you that it is coming up. I do not know the substance of the agreement yet.
Okay.
Maybe somebody else does.
Thanks.
No, I just wanted to put out my market commissioner hat and follow up on comments with a microphone.
Here you go, Chris. And then I know Earhart had a question. I don't know if it's
Came over there.
But we're gonna run out of time.
Yeah, I'll take that. Hey, I just wanted to follow up on that. While the numbers are good overall, I just want to remind folks that though overall that there are still, if you talk to some of the merchants, there are still some individual places that are struggling with the situation here. And what folks may not be aware of is we did hear from Mark Sherman, the owner of the Outdoor Gear Exchange, at the last Marketplace Committee meeting. And one of the things that he shared was the feedback that he had received regarding the opening of the new store in Essex and how people were overjoyed to be able to support a local business and not have to come to downtown Burlington in the process. So we still have a little bit of a ways to go on the perception issue, but we're still going in the right direction. So again, get out and shop, and don't only get out and shop, get out and go see live music too.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, every time I see folks talking about the marketplace on TV, it's always like hand wringing and how terrible things are. And this sends a terrible message around all over the state. And it's been sending a terrible message for literally a couple of years. I in my travels around the state, when I was still working for Bernie, I would often talk to, folks in other parts of the state that were like, I don't want to come to Burlington. It's too dangerous. There's no parking, blah, blah, blah. And part of that is that the message that I think that we send out as a community, and I'm not going to fault anyone individually, but when the Downtown Business Association has a representative on TV, they're always dour about what's going on downtown. And I just think we need some real positive PR spread around the state on CAX and on PTZ to tell people that Burlington is open for business and that it's doing well. My office was, until very recently, was downtown. I was downtown just about every day during the day. I'm downtown at nights as well. And it's a lot of this is a perception problem, I think, that is just unfortunately snowballed and gotten out of hand. I don't want to minimize that, there are businesses that are struggling, and a lot of that has to do with COVID and everybody's transition to Amazon and shopping online, and people haven't stopped shopping online. So it's a national trend. Retail is down and retail is struggling all over. So we have shopping malls that are closing all across the country. But I think, we've got a marketplace commissioner here, Chris. If I know your executive director, or whatever her title is, I can't remember, has actually been pretty positive when I've seen her on TV. But others that talk about downtown have not.
I've got one more funny note, at least before I leave, which is that I was in St. Albans doing a community forum. And it was very funny how many people are like, oh yeah, nobody wants to go to St. Albans because it's like too busy and there's too much crime and all this. So we're not the only big city in Vermont that's having these perception problems. Apparently, people from outside of St. Albans have the same story.
For whatever it's worth, it is a really difficult for me, a really difficult issue to talk about. And we discussed this a couple of meetings ago. I don't, as I'm sure you imagine, don't completely agree with you. I don't believe this is just a perception problem or just a question about online shopping. In fact, I know that that there are very serious, grave issues facing downtown that are directly related to public safety. And I think it's really, really important that when we talk about it, we don't engage in hyperbole and don't sort of look away from all the incredible positive aspects that are downtown. So I just wanted to make sure that my views on this were clear, because I'm sure I'm going to be coming back to you soon and giving you more information if I'm given the opportunity about some of the real imminent challenges that are happening downtown directly as a result of public safety, above and beyond the perception issue, which I do agree with.
And I want to try one more time. Big appreciation for Zariah and Tim and Gary.
Can I say something about Church Street really quick? I'll make it quick. About Church Street, about the shopping. Sure. So I don't speak for millennials. I don't speak for everyone in every age group. However, millennials, we were raised on anti-consumption media, Captain Planet. We were raised on Fern Gully. We were raised on like buying what was kind of necessary and phasing out this consumerist buy, accumulate stuff. And combined with, you know, wages getting outpaced by inflation, I think there's just some like really big overall trends that are changing. Millennials also love cafe culture. We love just chilling, like really just I'm tired of a lot of us are kind of tired of the advertisements and tired of shopping. A lot of us don't really own homes, so we're not buying home goods that much. So just something to kind of keep in perspective that some things might be changing in that sphere too. Yeah. All right. That said, I wish the best for Church Street, of course.
Next on our agenda is Brian, you're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Talk about the gateway block proposal.
Thanks, Tom. I'm Brian Pine, the Director of the Community and Economic Development Office. Samantha Dunn is my colleague. She is joining us remotely, and I'm going to ask Fosca to help advance the slides as we go. So you can go to the first actual content slide. So when we refer to the gateway block, we're really talking about this entire area from Main Street going north on Union to College, going west on College to South Winooski Avenue, and then back down to Main Street is what we call the gateway block. It is particularly unique block in the city in that there are a number of publicly owned properties, a church, and a small amount of private sort of what we call in-holdings, or I sometimes refer to as the hole in the donut, which is the pink shaded area here. So that's all privately held. What we are attempting to do is to take a look at the entire block rather than just, you know, try and address Memorial Auditorium or seek a proposal for a redevelopment plan for just the parking lot, but to really look at basically Memorial, how it relates to the rest of the site, how the fire station either stays or gets relocated, really looking at the whole thing from a broad master planning, or I should say comprehensive planning approach. We're trying to get away from that word, and for good reason. We are really trying here to address a number of key public policy goals, Memorial being one, a huge goal, and that is to deal with a city asset that is also has a fair amount of liability attached to it. And I don't mean just legal liability. I just mean the fact that the city owns a building that has been declared unfit for use and habitation for the last 7 years. And really, I think it was Sharon Busher who said, when someone asks me why Memorial is in the condition it's in, she said, you can go back to the mayor starting even before Bernie, when dollars were shaved off of maintenance budgets and Memorial was largely a part of the city infrastructure that wasn't adequately reinvested in. And I'll talk a little bit about both the politicians' role in that, but also the public's role in turning down key questions that came before them over the last 30 to 40 years to reinvest in the property. Next slide. So just another view of this area of our city, recognizing that the goals of downtown development to meet our needs as a community, to ensure that we have adequate housing, that we have commercial activity, that we have places for people to meet their needs. This currently certainly does not represent any of the best practices, if you will, around urban planning and land use. The fact that we have a massive site with parking, which was once the county jail and had a gorgeous structure on it, but that was torn down in the 70s. The county decided to build a jail down in South Burlington. And then the city purchased this and created a parking lot. So we've had a public parking lot here for the last over 50 years. The opportunities that exist here were identified. I think next slide is good. Let me just actually give a little background here. If you could, I won't read through the slide because we don't have that much time. We're trying to compress what was a 30-minute presentation to about a 15-minute, I think. Sorry. So there's a a list of efforts here going back 1994, the voters just narrowly approved. 50% was the margin, but it was a little over 50, but you needed 2/3 to reinvest. At the time, this was 30 years ago, $1 million into Memorial would have largely shored up the structure, new roof, repairs to the masonry, a whole bunch of work would have happened that did not pass 30 years ago. Fast forward to the process that that happened in the last 7 years ago was basically a decision that the building itself was really unsafe and could not continue to serve the public, followed by a public process to really identify what we could do with Memorial. And there was a very robust process that had a couple thousand survey respondents who basically really, it reiterated that it needs to serve the community and be a community hub and be a place where activity would occur. All of that was laid out in essentially an assessment which looked at what it would cost to take Memorial and repurpose it for that. And at the time, it was about a $30 million proposition, essentially, to repurpose Memorial. So in 2019, the city put out a request for proposals to find a private operator. It wasn't particularly successful, but it looked like the idea still had some merit. And then, as you know, 2020 hit and all things went on hold for Memorial, and a lot of other city projects went on hold. We then were, of course, faced with a significant financial need at our high school, which essentially took up all of the city's capacity to borrow to do capital projects, is tied up in the high school. And I don't know if that's motion activated or just on its way out, but on its way out, and it's out. So next slide. These are some of the previous proposals that looked at both Memorial and actually the whole block. And we even had in this process to look at where the high school would go. There was actually they did take a look at this site as a possible location. It was deemed not to be as good a site as the high school itself. We had a proposal to move the YMCA to Memorial and have mixed income and mixed use development happen on the parcel that is the parking lot. But because of the private inholdings, there was not able to be a coordinated development plan because we couldn't get control and couldn't get agreement from the owner of the private land in the middle of the property or in the middle of the block. We most recently had an RFP in 2022, request for proposals, and we got a couple of proposals, and one that seemed to have a lot of public uses and public benefits was one called Babarusa, which is a concept that I actually don't know that I can fully explain, but it's called immersive art. And some people have been to immersive art in Montreal, and also Meow Wolf, which I think maybe some folks have been to, but it sounds very interesting. It was a very intriguing idea, but the development concept never got off the ground. They determined that they didn't have the financial wherewithal to pull it off. Next slide. So really, in the context of urban land use and development, Plan BTV was the time that the community came together and looked at, what do we want to see in our downtown? And part of that result of that was that we, as a city, want to focus growth and development where we already have the infrastructure, we already have bus services, we have sidewalks, we have all the amenities that you're looking for development. And this was a site. This was really identified as a potential location for both some commercial development, mixed use, mixed income housing. And so that's sort of the planning policy that was laid out for the community by the community. Next slide, Fosca. Again, just another view. This is actually with the old Midtown Motel still there, right in the center of the photo there. And we have some drawings here that depict the type of development that was envisioned, or it was at least laid out as potential development that could occur at a much higher density and taller buildings than what is there now, for sure. But really recognize that this is the core of Vermont's largest city, and that having dense development in our downtown core achieves a whole bunch of public policy objectives in addition to trying to address the chronic undersupply of housing. Next slide. So what now for the whole block? We have real pressure with Memorial. It's in extremely dire condition, even though we just approved in 2022 some funding to essentially shore up the building, and those improvements have been made. The building is showing its wear and tear because of the years of neglect. There is really a question as to whether the funds are ever going to be available to restore the building. And so we're really trying to keep an open mind and hopefully trying to track the developer who has a desire to repurpose the building as much as possible and work with it. So that's a possibility, but I should also say that there may be an eventual decision for that the building has to come down. That's a possibility. So I don't want to surprise folks by saying that at a later date that we have to come back and say the building won't be able to be repurposed. We are, as a city, trying to meet the need for growing the tax base, providing more housing, activating that site for just from an urban development standpoint, and creating the type of vibrant downtown that we all, I think, value, while also dealing with the fact that we as a city have a piece of property that is largely costing us in the neighborhood of over 100,000 just to sort of maintain and keep it as it is, with really no noticeable public benefit on the horizon. Next slide. We just wanted to highlight some of the priorities that came out of the 2018 public process. These are certainly in, making sure that these don't get lost. I mean, these were priorities that the community identified for Memorial. And if we are going to have a redevelopment, we're trying to advocate for as much of the public space as we possibly can to continue to maintain it as a community hub of activity and a place, especially for young people, to be able to get together and do music and performance art. Next slide. So we're trying to address these priorities here. Obviously, we want this to be as the gateway to Burlington. It ought to be a place that when you see coming into Burlington, it's a shining example of sort of our pride for our community. Mixed income housing, of course, recognizing that it was built as a memorial to veterans from the First World War, and there's large plaques that are in the foyer of the building that no matter what, they will be preserved and restored, hopefully in place.
Doesn't seem to line up with the other slide feedback about what was identified.
Well, Chris, can we just get to can I get through the presentation, please, before you start? Yeah. We'll get back to questions in a minute, but I don't have that much time, so I want to try and get through. We're really trying to ensure that Memorial and the entire block get viewed as an opportunity for sort of comprehensive thinking about redevelopment and not be just focused on necessarily be limited by the possibilities that Memorial itself has on its own, because seen in light of the whole block and in light of or within the context of the potential for other development opportunities, there's much more that can be accomplished than just working with Memorial. So we're trying to approach it from that perspective. Next slide. We had some serious challenges with previous development proposals. There's a very large ravine sewer that crosses diagonally on this property that folks may know about. It's a very interesting piece of our history as a city, but yet it does prevent development from occurring on the parking lot. Certainly lack of city control over the private land has been a real challenge for us to work with. And obviously with our limited bond capacity, as I mentioned earlier with the high school, the city doesn't have the capacity to borrow funds to renovate and operate Memorial Auditorium. So next slide. We have tried a number of initiatives to try to attract other development opportunities. With the relocation of the ravine sewer, which is going to begin this coming spring as part of the Main Street project, it really does open up that entire parking lot now becomes a site that can be developed reasonably in terms of the cost without sitting on top of a city sewer system, which gets very complicated and would be, from a technical standpoint, would be really extremely expensive and very difficult to do. Obviously, we as a city want to grow our grand list in our downtown is a really ideal way to do that, to hopefully relieve the burden on the rest of our city when it comes to things like our school budget and our municipal services that we are facing some real challenges with as we look ahead to the next year or two in our city budget. Next slide. So we've been approached by those who control the inholding, the private inholding land, which is Eric Farrell and Joe Larkin. They are two local developers, local people who have a track record of pulling off fairly large, complex projects. And what they've essentially proposed to the city is that we would enter into a partnership where, at this point, a letter of intent, which I'll go into in just, I think, the next slide, is to look at the feasibility of a partnership and what that would look like. What would the city's benefits, what would the public benefits be? What type of, essentially, the development concept here is housing primarily, with a hotel and public space of some sort, in whether it's in Memorial or whether it's in a new building. All of that needs to still be figured out. There's essentially a 4-month in due diligence period, which we're in right now. The city council just approved a letter of intent, and that process is underway with the with this partnership with Farrell and Larkin to look at essentially what are the, we're not gonna know for sure, exactly how many housing units. We'll have an idea, roughly sort of order of magnitude, what they're thinking about in terms of housing. We're going to have an idea of how much public parking there would be. In the end, we'll know what they're proposing for other commercial uses, some ground floor retail, a number of factors or a number of potential options will be considered. And next slide. So these are the sort of highlights of the letter of intent that the council approved a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. Looking at all of the relationships between the developers and the city, and in terms of, what's the property worth, what's the city's ultimate goal with respect to community space, with respect to public parking, and achieving the housing goals, of course, with a mix of housing types and housing targeting different income levels. This will look at issues around other barriers. It could be additional technical, geotechnical, and environmental barriers on the site. We don't know. We think, based on what has been done in the past, that it's largely deals with the ravine sewer as the biggest issue. But this will look at everything, and really the issue of the fire station, whether it stays or whether it gets relocated. About 5 years ago, the city did a study looking at how to ensure that the city has the best coverage for fire response. And that location was, by the consultants and by the fire department itself, was viewed as not the best location for the central fire operation of the city. Geographically, it actually fits a little bit better south of Main Street, so sort of down the Pine Street corridor as far as call volume and where the largest number of calls are that generate the most response from the fire department. So that issue will be looked at that's a much more extensive issue regarding, do we relocate? Does this development pay for a new fire station? I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues to be figured out, which is all part of this due diligence period. And next slide. This is the time period for the feasibility work. We're in this initial due diligence period until the end of March. If it looks like it has real potential, and the city and the developers can come to agreement, there'll be a development agreement that lays out responsibilities, obligations, benefits, some costs, of course. But I think in the end, it's going to be, is there a feasible project here that we can do as a public-private partnership? And that we'll know hopefully by the end of March. I think that is it for these slides, although I did want to point out there's a lot more detail here on the website. It's CETO's website. It is listed under capital projects is the heading. If you go to that, you'll find a whole section on Memorial, which has the history of Memorial, prior redevelopment studies, both for Memorial, but also for the entire block as well. So now we're open to questions.
Questions?
I have questions, but I'm going to refer to the Ward 1 folks.
Kathy's hand.
Are you going to push for whatever's built down there, one, to be green, and
that it's green? I mean, when we did the high school, we were pushed to do all of this stuff to make it really ecologically sound into a millennium. And I have no problem with what we did. I actually was for it. I just want to make sure that when these are private public partnerships, that the private is made to do what, you know, the rest of the buildings that are publicly owned should be doing also when they're built.
Yeah, the standards for energy performance, for instance, will be at or exceeding the state energy code. So I think we'll probably see a very high level of energy performance. There's also no new fossil fuels to be used in new buildings. So we're going to see basically an all electric building. If they can, I mean, I don't think they're, I mean, if they have a way of determining whether there's any renewable energy that they can do on site, I think they're looking at that as well. They're definitely very interested in that.
The other thing, and this is less of one, but I just hope if Farrell's doing it, downtown doesn't look like North Avenue. Aesthetically, that's
okay. Point well taken.
Other questions? Carter?
Well, just like clarifying, so I heard you in saying that like you're looking at the whole block to maybe increase like more folks having interest in different projects. What was unclear to me is like, is the library and the church being moved? Is it just the parking that would be affected?
Yeah,
like how does that tie into the
good point? I didn't speak much about that. The library itself is not impacted in that way, but there may be a parking solution that means that the library doesn't need to have the parking lot that they have right now. Like it could be that there's a reworking of parking. So that's all to be determined in that due diligence period. And the church also just they want green space actually is what they want, and to have parking nearby. So it may be that you get some green space between the library and the church, and then there's parking in a parking structure. So that may be part of the solution. Yeah.
Jonathan?
Just
There you go.
I got two.
Thanks, Mike.
Just in terms of the library is on the threshold of embarking on a renovation project. One aspect of that renovation project is energy related, and we are doing geothermal test wells any day now, and we also are looking into PV, and our aspirational goal is to work with this project and make the entire basically be an energy neutral block, that we work together to build this power plant essentially that would be running the block. That's aspirational, but that's kind of what we're thinking about right now. My understanding is that there may be no surface parking. Is that right?
I can say right now the city ordinances will not support surface parking here.
Yeah. So it'll all end up underground. Everybody will park underground.
Let's go say this question online.
Hey Brian, it's Mark. I'm wondering if you got these folks, the private folks, Farrell, I forgot what the other name is. Do they own this hole in the donut here that's in the center?
They have they have site control, so they have an option to buy if they can get through this due diligence period. So they kind of control it, but they don't actually own it.
Okay, is that the reason why the partnership exists? I guess.
Exactly right. Yep.
Okay, all right. And just kind of off to the side, it's outside of the scope of what it is you're talking about, but is there any talk about what's to become of that gas station on the corner there? On the other side of the street?
Yeah. It's privately owned, and the private owner is not someone we've been engaged with. I know in the past, the person who is a commercial broker who's connected to that private property owner has said that there's some interest if redevelopment begins to happen in the area. And with you all doing the new VFW CHT project, and this happening potentially, would be, I think it would help spur some activity across the street.
Yep, that's why I asked. Thanks.
So I think I was next. Yeah. So just a question about the auditorium and the shape that it's in, understanding that, there's no guarantees. But are there additional renovations that, given the timeline, this is going to take several years, based on the timeline you showed, Brian, are there additional repairs that need to be made in order to stabilize it to at least, maintain the possibility of it being kept?
Yeah, the voters did approve up to $1 million in upgrades to shore the building up, and a lot of that work has been done already. So it's in decent shape to hold up for a few years.
You alluded
Yeah.
You alluded to those. I just was asking if there's additional stuff that's needed, given the timeline of a couple more years.
I'm not clear on whether there's additional work that will take place other than to ensure you got to keep people from being near the building. It's that dangerous that materials could actually fall off the exterior of the building and hit people. So that's an issue that needs to be dealt with. So there has to be a fence around the building, unfortunately. And that's going to happen sometime in the next 6 months.
Those kinds of risks can't be repaired in the meantime.
No, the masonry damage is significant with the freeze thaw. Yeah, significant. Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple. I got several that are pretty quick and so
I think if I understood correctly, the 2018 process was looking at Memorial Auditorium kind of in itself, and now we've kind of expanded the purview to the entirety of the Gateway block. So looking at kind of the bigger picture, just want to make sure that we still have an articulated community desire for community space, and make sure that doesn't get lost in the shuffle. I would think that a city as big as Burlington, the largest city in Vermont, 45,000 people, we ought to have some kind of public civic center for us, not only as a valid community space for the community and youth, but also for economic development purposes. And, what are we passing up as a city because we don't have suitable venue for certain types of events here in our town? The question I had was related to the presentation was, as you said, I think this other word ownership up there, is that kind of implied to me that the ownership of the city owned parcels may be in play, and that there may be some consideration that those parcels could possibly be sold to a private developer at some point?
I think sale is less likely than a lease, long-term lease, and hold on to them as city property. That's a more, based on what the council has said, that's really the direction I think it would more likely go.
That's a capital idea. So ideally, the city could potentially have the title to the land. And if it were, say, a vacant lot, such as the parking lot, a private developer could erect a private building. The city would get revenue from the lease payments and then get additional revenue in the form of taxes from the building. Yeah. Sounds like a really good proposition. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? In your hands. Brian, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you,
Brian. All right. Our final issue tonight is the Richard Kemp Center. Mark, are you going to give this presentation?
No, I was actually going to do it, but I think I'd prefer to maybe get put on the next agenda since there's 9 minutes left.
It's gonna be tight, but we should try.
You want to put it on the next agenda?
Well,
Push it back?
it's just that it's tight right now. I mean, right now, it's not much time, right? And
There's very little time.
and we're sorry that.
Can
you
you
had,
say it to the microphone so she can hear them?
I'm shouting, I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Oh, here.
The request is, can we not do it tonight because we don't have enough time? Push it out to January.
You're all certainly welcome to come by and visit if you haven't already.
Which would be great. Yeah, I think maybe we should move it because it's only fair. And I apologize for your having to sit through this whole meeting, although it might have been interesting.
It was very interesting. I learned a lot.
Okay, so we'll invite you back in January.
Yeah.
But since we do have just a few minutes, can you summarize what the Richard Kemp Center does? And then we'll get all the details in January.
Yep, it's actually right there. If you're all seeing the presentation, we're expanding programs that already exist in the community and supporting Black Vermonters' wellness, preserving culture, supporting youth, and advancing racial equity and justice. And again, I would just invite folks who haven't already been there to stop by and visit, and then I'll plan to try to get on the agenda for a future meeting.
Okay, and you're located where the old unfinished wood furniture place was on North Winooski?
Right, across from the community health center.
Okay, and I actually was in their location last week, and it's really nice inside. So I'd encourage everyone to go and pay a visit. All right, we'll reschedule you for next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your patience. Sure.
So, since we're talking about agendas and future agendas, and tonight we were talking about this, the schools and that was on tonight's agenda, and we were also talking about the accessibility to the city council and the things that there in the mayor's office is talking about. Let me just say that back about 5 to 15 years ago, wards 2 and 3 NPA routinely had the superintendent of schools attend the January wards 2 and 3 NPA meeting. And the superintendent sort of made the rounds a little bit, but basically it was focused on wards 2 and 3 and 4 and 7. So there's nothing to go back. Now, the new superintendent we have has never done that. So I'm just saying it would be a new idea to invite that person. But I'm just saying it was routine in the past to have the superintendent of schools come to each NPA and talk about, because that's in January is when the school budget is pretty much settled. And so the superintendent can say really intelligent things and accurate things about the school. The same thing. So you were also talking about the city council. So there's nothing to prevent the NPAs from inviting the president of the school of the city council to come to their meeting. Now, I'm not saying that city councilors are not overburdened already, but in the past, like wards 2 and 3 also would invite the president of the city council to come and talk to and get introduced to and meet the people from local MPAs. So,
2 minutes.
okay. Well, I'm just saying, that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks.
Can I just echo that we did do that historically. We invited the superintendent the same way in January when the budget was up, something we did regularly.
All right, thank you very much. I think we are done.
Oh, yeah.